Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Rotation. My name is Ashley, aka MiDNiTE, back here again with the usual suspects, IKON, Kingdom. So much to unpack from stage freaking 4. It's a feels bad time to be a Røkkr fan, but changes in the well, I shouldn't even say in the works. They don't happen. So we have a lot to talk about this week, and yeah, let's hop into it, gentlemen. I'd love to hear just your thoughts on stage 4 as a whole. What do you guys think of FaZe coming back and kind of relinquishing the throne? What's your thoughts?
I guess I'll tackle this one. I feel like there were a couple major storylines here. First of all, and I don't know why, but I kind of felt all throughout this major that I just had a ton of confidence in the Atlanta FaZe. And every time I did predictions, even though Toronto had been absolutely on fire and New York was the squad that made it into that grand final from the winners bracket by beating Atlanta in that winners bracket final 3-2. I don't know. I just felt like when it came down to a best of 9, I still, even though they lost the last major and even though they just lost to New York, I just still felt like maybe Toronto was better that day, but the vast majority of the time, Atlanta is going to be better in a best of 9 on most days than most other squads. And plus, I feel like they took a little bit of momentum and they were able to use their loss in that stage 2 major to their advantage. And I think that you saw a different Atlanta FaZe in this major. Again, I know that they did end up losing to New York, but they went down to losers bracket. They were able to get that win over Toronto. That propelled them into the grand final where they won 5-2. So first storyline for me is that it seems like Atlanta is kind of where most people would probably expect them to be. They're back on top. They're our stage 3 champs and number 1 seed and all that good stuff heading into stage 4. The other major storyline here is that somehow, some way, Optic was able to kind of figure it out. And I don't even know where it came from because the end of stage 3 group play, like, they looked completely lost. This is a team that to start the year and for the vast majority of the year was one of the best hardpoint teams in the game. And they went into this tournament losing like 6 or 8 hardpoints in a row. And they just didn't seem like they were able to really get things figured out. But I think that it helped them getting a match against LAG to start. I think it might have been a little bit different had they just kind of snuck into that winners bracket and then had to have played, I don't know, Atlanta or Dallas or somebody like that first that might have beat them. I think that starting with a match against LAG, I think that they were able to kind of regain their composure. They were able to get some wins on maps like hardpoints, and then they just carried that through. And they were kind of dominant in the maps after that. Once they got that 3-1 victory over LAG, I'll be honest, when I first saw that matchup between Optic and Dallas, I was like, well, this could go either way. Like, I thought it was a toss-up. I went ahead and I picked Optic. I believe we all picked Optic to win that match. And it was a 3-0, and it was over super fast. And like, okay, I guess Optic has arrived. I guess Optic has showed up again. And speaking of showing up again, Dashy looked phenomenal this weekend, and I think he probably had the biggest reason to do with why they went on that mini run. I think everybody played great. Scump had some maps where he looked like Scump from 2013 Black Ops 2, and it just seemed like they put it all together during those times when it counted most. Got the 3-0 against Dallas, got the 3-0 against Florida, a Florida squad that had been looking much better. They started their tournament with the win over LA Thieves, and then they got beat by New York, but that's just because New York was in the middle of like their hot streak there to take them to grand finals. And then it came down, and that matchup between Optic and Toronto was probably the match of the weekend for me. Came all the way down to that map 5 S&D round 11. I don't know. I just, as soon as I saw the maps, so I know that we were going back and forth and putting predictions in the chat and stuff. the very first thing that I saw is I felt like if it would have been like 3 hard points and 2 controls and you would have taken out Search, I feel like Optic would have won that matchup easily. But as soon as you throw in the SNDs and as soon as that map 5 SND is raid, Toronto is just such a good raid S&D team. Even though Optic was playing better, and when it came to the hard points and the respawns, they were winning by a massive margin. I just feel like every once in a while, you get a team that's really dominant on a map and mode. And when I saw that map 5 was raid S&D, I didn't know if Optic would have been able to pull it off. And it did come down to a round 11. It was an incredible match to watch. But Toronto ended up winning. And then Toronto went on to play Atlanta. Atlanta won in map 5. And then it went to the grand finals, as we all knew. So the biggest storylines for me was just the fact that Atlanta came out. They kind of regained their position as the number 1 squad in the CDL, at least in my mind and probably most people's mind. And then Optic entered this tournament and just didn't look great. And they somehow regained and found themselves and went on a little mini run. So it's exciting to see those squads kind of back where they were before, and we'll see what happens here going into stage 4.
I mean, I think IKON wrapped up a lot of what happened, but for me, what stood out was just that Dallas proved that they have a lot of work to do. Optic proved they're legit. NYSL proved they're legit. They're one of the top 3 teams in this league. They're in the same tier. They kind of put themselves in the same tier, maybe with just Toronto. FaZe seems to be the only team that beat New York or Toronto, and that seems to be their Achilles heel, which if it's FaZe that beats you, Toronto had won Control like 12 times in a row, and then they lost to FaZe. And it's like, if you're going to lose to anyone, let it be the best combination of 4 players on planet Earth, basically, in those 4 guys. And so I think FaZe had something to prove in this tournament. Optic did too. They could have been 7th at the end of this tournament, and instead they kind of have solidified their position in the top 4 of the league, and they look like a top 4 team again. And I think that's where they belong. That roster should be there, period. And LAT's got some thinking to do. If we're going to see, we've seen enough changes on the timeline already since the major, and maybe we'll see some more. And LAT is one of those teams that, honestly, I don't think had the results that they wanted with Hook on the roster. I mean, he showed out and did some cool stuff, but they did not place the way they wanted to place in this tournament. And for them to have lost in the kind of that first up in winners, and this league, in my opinion, what's happened as a result is it's kind of clear where the teams are. There's 4 teams in this league that do not have 100 points, and FaZe is up 100 points on second place. And so we're seeing the league literally just stretch to where we could probably do the math right now and pick which position will never make top 8, no matter, or will never, so we can say probably the top 5 teams, I think right now in the CDL are guaranteed to go to champs. It'd be interesting to kind of do the math and see, like, if 9th place got 100 points, they'd still only be at 190. They'd be below Optic right now. And so I would say these top 5 teams are pretty solid. Like, they're going. And it's really about seeding for any team below, I would say, FaZe. Everybody else is just fighting for seeding that's in there in that top 5. And then the Minnesota ROKKR got to get back on a grind. They're not safe. I don't think the Florida Mutineers are safe. I do think the bottom 4 teams are just fighting for 8th place right now. They're not fighting to win chips. And that doesn't mean they can't, but I just don't. I mean, this league has proved to us there's a certain tier of teams that are going to win these tournaments, and it's leveled off after 3 majors who that is. It can be stolen by kind of those middle teams. I'd say there's kind of 4 teams in the middle that can get a chip, but they'd have to go through FaZe and Toronto and New York and Optic, which doesn't sound like a fun day at the park. So I think the major was awesome. To IKON's point, I think the Optic and Toronto match was good. I think the first NYSL and FaZe match was really good. Like, that was very entertaining to me. And I hate to say it, but what Toronto did to LAT, to the Thieves, basically 500 to 80ing them, which is the super duper 100-point club, like 2 hard points and they couldn't get 100 points. Like, that 250 to 14 was the worst beating I've seen probably in my time watching Hardpoint. Yeah, like since Black Ops 2. I don't even in league play, me by myself getting beat, I don't think I've ever only scored 14 points. And so that was crazy to see from professionals. And then it was like, oh, we changed servers. And then they got beat really bad in the next one and 100 Point clubbed again. So Toronto just showed we're in a different tier. You can change rosters, but there's just certain teams in this league that are going to be really hard to catch. So I thought it was a great event overall, you know, and to the Minnesota ROKKR, you know, I know we're going to talk about the change that was announced, and I look forward to seeing, you know, what Major brings to the team and what happens in this next stage.
Yeah, I mean, I'll follow up you guys. I thought for as horrifically sad as it was for ROKKR to get eliminated straight away, god dang, the Major delivered. Like, I still am just as invested, obviously, when other teams are, well, I shouldn't say just as. I'm definitely way more invested when ROKKR is playing, but I'm still very much a CDL fan, so I watched all the matches. I loved taking it in, and oh my gosh, there were so many banger round 11 search and destroys. It was absolutely nuts. So we'll get into that more, but first, I want to give a big shout out to the chat. What up, chat? Yeah, we got 50 people here. Listen, that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot for us. All right, we chilling. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining. Big shout out to Trevor in the chat. Trevor works for us here, version 1 at ROKKR, and he is in Iceland right now. Which, Trevor, isn't it like way past your bedtime? Or I don't know if you have a bedtime or you got like you know, what is it, 5 hours ahead? It's like, I'm bad at math. Kingdom, Icon, what time is that? It's like 12 there. It's late.
Yeah,
it's
10:45 if it's 5 hours from me.
Shit.
It's
yeah, from you.
Yeah, you guys are,
okay.
So from you guys, yeah, I guess it's midnight. Yeah, it's like 12:45. Yeah, something like that.
Time zones are hard. Listen, and then I want to give a big shout out to Tanush. Am I saying that right? I'm so sorry if I'm not. Racine Preston in the rotation live at the same time. I'm losing my mind right now. But hey, here you are. You made it. Big shout outs to Preston. Wow. I mean, we'll talk about ROKKR and Preston's performance at Major 3. Obviously, not the ending we wanted to the third stage, but god dang was Preston lighting it up, which was sick. And then we got to talk about Blast, man. Blast is doing big things. If you guys don't know, about a month or so ago, we announced Blast as a Warzone streamer and player for Minnesota ROKKR. So shout out Blast. His Twitch is Blast, BLAZT. He just qualified for, so he's playing in 100 T's, Nate, or 100 sorry for cursing. 100 Thieves, Nade Shots, 100K Warzone tournament. Day 1 was today. There was a qualifier. The top 8 teams of 16 teams go on to play tomorrow, and Blast and Mutex, so our boy Blast, got first in the qualifier, so he will get the best possible seed for the rest of the tournament tomorrow. Day 2's tomorrow. It's going to be crazy. I believe it starts at, quick math, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, so definitely watch twitch.tv/blast with a Z instead of an S. And check him out. Cheer on our boy, man. That's awesome. Hey, man. He's qualifying to do his thing. He's in the top 8. Maybe ROKKR could get in the top 8 this CDL season too. I mean, we already are.
They already are.
Man.
Yep.
So let's talk ROKKR. Let's talk roster change. I want to hear the opinions of the chat too. Obviously, it was pretty controversial when, you know, MajorManiak was benched in the first place. We saw Preston going from the second sub role to the second AR role, and then Lamar Accuracy was staying on the main AR. You had Attach staying as the main sub, and then you had Standy coming in, the freakish kid from Challengers, man, just coming in, making an immediate impact on the team. And we saw there was a great honeymoon period in stage 2, a little bit in stage 3, but then just something happened. There was a big, I wouldn't even call it a plateau, like we dipped back down. And so the whole time there, MajorManiak was on the bench. He's just vibing. MajorManiak, I think he's capable to play just about every role in Call of Duty. He's a talented player. He was a main AR last year. That was kind of the big, like, I know when this team was made, everyone's like, 2 main ARs on the same team, how's it going to work? And then we were like, no, it's going to work. And then what happened. It didn't work. So now you got, you know, Accuracy, incredible player. I mean, the 1v3 Iceman himself, clutch player, like insanely good leader. Now going to the bench after, you know, not a great performance from the whole team in stage 3. You got MajorManiak coming in off the bench too, assumingly, I don't think they've said it, but assumingly he's going to be the main AR for the team. I don't think Priesta would be the main AR, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. But I would love to know your guys' take. Icon, Kingdom, let's rotate around. What's your guys' take on the roster change here? Should we have just done this from the start? Was it worth trying what we did? Are we still in okay shape to make top 8 and maybe hit a really hot end of the year here? And who knows, maybe we can win champs. I'm very delusional. I got the ROKKR stuff everywhere. I drink the purple Kool-Aid. I still think we can win champs, but I'd love to know your guys' opinion here.
So I think Icon, especially with the gameplay itself, I think he may have some different takes than me. I think the move that you guys made originally was great. Obviously, you went and beat Optic and Dallas, off the bat, and have had some success. Standy's looked good. Attach has never changed. This dude has just been consistent, like, for the team all year long. Like, I don't remember seeing a time where I was like, oh yeah, Attach didn't play well this stage or this event. Like, he just has been consistent, reliable, in position. When Priesta wasn't playing well, it was obviously because of the role situation. And to your point about the whole main AR thing, I heard EasyMax say something on some podcast I was watching, and it's something that I mentioned a while back because of the LA Thieves, which is a kind of play style that the LA Thieves brought to the scene that everybody, I guess, has noticed now, is like there really isn't a main AR, there's two ARs. And there's a fast one and a slow one, is kind of the way EasyMac put it. And they can switch out the role depending on the map, depending on the mode, depending on what each one is better at. It's almost like having two flex players, kind of, but they're AR centric, I guess. And so I do think that, especially with the recent Craig buff that was announced that's coming, I do think that you're going to just see two ARs. I mean, Brian Saint was making a joke on Twitter and was like, there's going to be 4 Craigs on land. And so I think that having, like, not just good ARs, but having a good mix. Like you said, Priesta is not going to be main probably, but I don't think either will be main. I think it'll be, what's Priesta's role, what's MajorManiak's role. MajorManiak, like you just said, can really flex in and out of whatever role is needed, but so can Priesta. So I think that best of both worlds could really work. I just think the combination of Priesta and accuracy, like, for some reason, stopped working. And I know that, this is a difficult time for a lot of ARs. We've got Slasher on the bench, we've got Methods on the bench, we've got Accuracy on the bench. These are 3, Accuracy with the 1v3, we've seen it more than once. Like, these are like, Methods is frying in challengers. MajorManiak is frying in challengers. Like, so we're seeing these guys that can play really well, but there's not as many spots right now in the league for that main AR type of player. I think that what Mike has been able to do, MajorManiak, in challengers, will prepare him for really fulfilling a role that is going to have to be a little flexible. And I think he's going to do a great job. I think it's going to be good for the team. Do not think it was a mistake to try what was tried. But again, like we said, when the MajorManiak roster change happened, he was always on the bench. That was the first thing we said. Like, there was always a chance that he was going to be able to get brought back to this team. The ROKKR didn't let him go. And so, we'll see what happens with Accuracy, but oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, but think about his shot, though. That could be dangerous. You put an AR in Standy's hands. That could be dangerous. Like, and that's what happened with Kenny. And that team, the way they play off of each other, him and Draza, is just great. And I think that Priesta and MajorManiak are going to do some great things, and it's needed. It's very needed right now for the Minnesota ROKKR. We were talking pre-show. I think top 4 is, like, of course you want to win, but I think top 4 is like fail safe. That's where that is required. And so the other thing I wanted to say about this, and this is just me, this is Anthony. I understand that this is sports and it's sports entertainment, and there's a lot of investments and things like that going on. And sometimes people don't understand. They're like, why would you change this person? Why would you do this? Why would you do that? Sometimes it's to show those people that have a vested interest in your team that you're willing to make changes to do better. And sometimes that's all it comes down to. When you see coaches get changed in the NFL, NBA, it's like, well, the coach was doing fine. It's just that you got to show the team and the fans and everybody that really depends on this org and relies on this org that you're invested in making a change. And there's a lot of teams in this league that waited to do those things. We have a team in the league right now that doesn't have a 4th. It's unfortunate. the Minnesota ROKKR have been proactive about this from the beginning of the season. And I think it's a wise decision. I'm looking forward to how they play.
Yeah, so a couple things here from my point of view on this is, one, I think that it's a move that had to have happened. I think if you go all the way back to just the beginning of the year, I think the main storyline for Minnesota's roster is that, wow, this is a really good collection of players, but we're just not sure how it's going to fit and how it's going to work around the map. And I think a lot of that was solved by bringing in Standy. I think Priesta, when he was in the position that he was in as that second SMG, it just didn't feel comfortable. Where you really started to see a change is that, one, Standy has been phenomenal. I don't think you could have asked for a better SMG to bring in and put alongside Attach. I think those two have gelled tremendously in that matchup against London. Standy was the one that was making a ton of plays. He had the best stats. I mean, what he's done since he's come in has really propelled Minnesota kind of into where they're at today. But putting Priesta into that flex role obviously was a big thing. But even when that roster move was made, there were a lot of people, even back then, that was saying, well, the nice thing about how Minnesota's roster was before is that you did have MajorManiak and you did have accuracy, and they're two players that played main AR the year before. And when that roster move was made, a lot of people were saying it's great to have both of them. And some people argued for accuracy being the fourth when that move was made. And some people asked, well, why not Mike be the fourth when that move was made? And I think that if you're Minnesota, you're sitting back and you're thinking, okay, if we're looking at kind of our maps and our modes overall, Hardpoint is not going great, but Search, like Hardpoint has been better than before, but it's not tremendous. But the drop off in Search was really the thing that was holding Minnesota back from what they did in stage 2. And I don't want to say from what they did in stage 1, because in stage 1 they were great at Search but not really good at Hardpoint. So those two have kind of flipped. And I think bringing in Mike might help records overall when it comes to Hardpoint. If you just go through and you look at MajorManiak and accuracy stats throughout the entirety of the year, in S&D, in Control, they're really close in what those two do. But the differences that MajorManiak brings in Hardpoint, I think it's going to shore up a lot of wins in those map 1s, because it feels like in our co-streams, we've talked time and time again, like how important that map 1 is with a squad that's like really good at Control. Minnesota's like the 4th best team in the CDL, I believe, at Control overall. And if you're playing raid Control, that's almost a guaranteed victory. So if you can come out and you can win that map 1 Hardpoint, you can shore that up. And then if you get a raid Control, that's almost basically 2 wins out of the first 3 maps. And then I know that if you just look at stats and you look at kills per round and first blood percentages and a lot of those other stats when it comes to S&D, I know that, you know, there's not too much of a difference if you're looking at accuracy and MajorManiak. But the major thing that is a difference is that Mike plays a little bit faster in S&D. I think, like, for example, if you're just one map, just taken as an example, if you look at Miami S&D on offense, accuracy pretty much always sits back in visitors and looks over the beach, and Priesta's pushed up over towards boat. And that's like the setup. That's their defensive setup that you see more times than not. Attach and Standy go over towards hotel, and they kind of patrol that area. But you basically always see accuracy in the same spot. And on offense, you see him top hotel, right? Like kind of like that middle building, just looking over the middle of the map, seeing if anybody's going to push the flank. Like if it's a hotel push at the bottom side of the map, accuracy is watching over towards beach, seeing if anybody's going to push. He's watching the cross from one side to the other. So a lot of what accuracy does is very he's in one position a lot of the times in S&D. And just thinking back to how Minnesota was at the beginning of the year, you saw a lot of times, like on S&D in Miami, where MajorManiak was that player where, okay, we need to switch it up for a defensive round in Miami S&D. He'd be the one that's literally running right down the middle of the map, and he's getting underneath that top loft position. And as soon as somebody runs out, like he's getting a 2-piece there. He was that player that was mixing things up at the beginning of the year. And I think if you take what he does in that mode, and even though the stats might not be extremely different, and first blood percentage and engagements per round and kills per round and all that stuff is pretty much similar, I think just the way that he plays that mode overall could have a little bit of a lasting change, and the change that Minnesota needs as they go into stage 4. So just kind of looking at it as a whole, I think that Mike is a faster hardpoint player. I think, you know, that's why he was originally in that flex position, because he does play hardpoint a little bit quicker. And I think the nuances that he brings to S&D, I think they could be 2 changes that probably end up helping Minnesota. And he's on the bench anyways. So if he's on the bench and he's there and you need a change, and, you know, like you're competing against Toronto and you're competing against some of these top squads, that London match, I mean, we can talk about that all we want. But if you're consistently competing with some of those top squads, I think, you know what, let's go ahead. He's there. He's been playing really well in challengers. Let's bring him in. Let's see what happens. And, you know, who knows? I mean, the way that a lot of these roster change, like London has made roster change after roster change after roster change. They've had like 45 players on their squad this year. And finally, they got one that struck lightning, and they've been playing really well as of late. And then they go and make another one. So I don't know what's going on there, but it just seems like this year teams are really open to saying, we need a little bit of a change, and I think these nuances can help our roster overall. Let's go ahead and make it, and let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, I know that it's getting later in the year, and we are in the 4th stage, but you still have all of stage 4. You have all of stage 5. So we're right in the middle of the year. Let's make a change. Let's see what happens. And I think that mentality is better than sitting back and crossing your hands and saying, well, let's hope something works out, and let's hope that our guys can figure it out. No, go make a move. Let's make it happen. And I think that this could be one that helps Minnesota going into stage 4.
Yeah, I think so too. And one thing that's key to point out, you know, when the original roster change was made, you know, Coach Brian Sates and Jake, they said, hey, like, we're going to be moving MajorManiak to the bench. Priest is moving to AR. Standy's coming in. This is the, you know, the next iteration of this roster. And I think the keyword's iteration there, right? Like, I mean, it makes me even more curious what Dallas was doing, just getting rid of Hook before, like, benching him and seeing how this thing shook out. It really puts out in there that there must have been some deep issues there. Yeah, there had to been. So yeah, like, thankfully, like, ROKKR wasn't in that position. We're able to put MajorManiak on the bench, and, you know, it's not the traditional, like, riding the bench, doing F all, you know, all day. You know, he goes into the challengers scene, and I don't know how many people are aware, but there's a ton of tournament play that happens in challengers. There's all these challengers cups. I saw in the chat, you know, Tanush put, yeah, he had a 1.7 S&D KD in challengers. He had the #1 S&D KD in the challengers elite. So yeah, it's kind of crazy that, like, he got more reps, he got great practice, he performed very well in challengers, as you would expect, because he's Major freaking Maniac, and now he's getting another chance. But I do think it was necessary for ROKKR to do what they did with accuracy. I mean, and you saw, like, what makes me a little bit, you know, I'll always ponder this, like, we saw how good that team was, you know, after that change. I mean, yeah, you say what you want about the honeymoon period, but man, they were looking lethal. It was crazy. And so I'm not sure, like, how things digressed, or what goes on to make that happen, or if meta changes change things. But it was really interesting to watch it just suddenly not work out after we were all like, shoot, I was already, like, bought my ticket to champs. I had front row seats to watch ROKKR in the grand finals in my mind. But then, yeah, you have an unfortunate stage 3, right? So it's kind of crazy to me that, like, I don't know. I think a couple people in the chat, Typical as well as Will, talking about, you know, new strats and speed and S&D. I think, you know, I think that Mike, I think you made a great point, Icon, about, you know, respawns and how MajorManiak can have an impact on those. He's a great respawn player, and he's a phenomenal search and destroy player. The only thing I do worry about is, you know, Lamar accuracy. He is the, you know, the IGL, he's the captain of the team, right? So without that, you know, that bigger voice in there that the guys are listening to, like, how does this team, you know, kind of shake out? I think they'll be all right. You know, you have a tremendous amount of experience between Attach, Priesta, MajorManiak. They're all very experienced, especially Attach. So I think they'll be all right. But yeah, it does leave a couple questions of like, man, I wonder how this is going to work out. So I'm very excited to see like how these guys look now. And I guess, yeah, this newest iteration. And I do think like, I know when you're the main AR, there's like main setups on Search and Destroy. Like you go here and you watch here with your turret gun and you just chill, right? I get it.
Yep.
Yes, and MajorManiak wasn't a main AR when he was pulling off these crazy Search and Destroy pushes, but he just has a natural mind for Search and Destroy. He's not saying accuracy doesn't. Accuracy's also a great search player. They do have very comparable stats, but MajorManiak, watching him play S&D, he's just different. He positions himself really well, and I think that's something that we're lacking from the AR play in Stage 3. So, frick, man, I'm back in the front row of champs. We might be able to freaking do it. I don't know. I really hope that that things go.
If there's a third row of champs, yeah, it would be great to be there.
Yeah, I don't know. I have actually no idea if there's going to be like spectators at champs. I wish. Dude, I hope. I don't know. Me too. I hope.
One other thing that I'll just kind of say based off of what you were saying, MiDNiTE, is just the fact that I think that, yes, there's no doubt about it that accuracy is more so than not that player that is making calls in S&D and being the IGL and stuff like that. But the other thing that could really help this squad is that, of course, Mike can do a lot of those things, but I think this is an opportunity for Standy to have more of a voice in those situations too. And I think a lot of the different mindset and the faster mindset that he brings to the game, not only in respawns, but specifically in Search and Destroy, I think that could also help them just in the way that they play S&D rounds overall. Like, I mean, like if we're talking about specifics, like being more aggressive on defense, or you know what, like if we're playing Miami S&D again, let's hit hotel. Let's 3-stack it. Let's try to get bombed down. Like, I just feel like, again, a change of pace could be good overall. And I think maybe possibly giving a little bit more of a voice to Standy in those scenarios could help gameplay and could change the way that those things play out over time.
Agreed.
Word up, man. I just hope stuff's got to go up from here, man. Yeah, I mean, there was so much kind of back and forth in the league that it's hard to say, oh yeah, well, just chalk. No, man, there's this, we're getting, you know, like you said, towards the latter half of the year here. So Donald says, yo, shout out to producer Shannon, by the way. Big ups to Shannon. We should have her on a show one time. Big ups to Shannon. She's putting the comments on the screen. Donald, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Sorry if I read any of your names wrong. It's all love here. I just can't read. But Major seemed, he mentions, Major seemed like a senior figure on Atlanta team last year. He'll very likely do the same on this team now. And yeah, I'd have to agree. Like, MajorManiak has a ton of experience. He might not have the same you know, length of IGL leadership that accuracy has. I feel like accuracy's always kind of been that big, louder kind of voice on the team. But I do think that he, you know, him and Priest have tremendous chemistry, right? I think Attach and Standy have been showing that they have good chemistry. They've been playing really well as a duo. And I'm just hoping that, you know, yeah, the chat's good. Hype for Shadow. Let's go. Round of applause for Shadow. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go. Much love. Yeah, she makes this whole thing work. Literally, we just show up and talk. Bless Shannon. But yeah, what I was gonna say is, I know we can talk about other stuff too and kind of do a little look ahead. I mean, technically, we don't have anything to predict this week. Like, it's All-Star weekend, and I'll watch it, but like, I'm not hype. I guess I'm hyped to watch Standy. Standy's the only Røkkr player playing an All-Star this weekend. I think, at least that's what it looks like on the graphic.
Do you know how it says the votes are in? Was that something voted on the website, or like on the CDL website?
To my probably wrong understanding, I thought that the casters were voting and then the fans were voting, and those are going to be separate votes. And I thought that there was going to be 2 representatives from each team, but then only Standy got up there.
There's a couple teams, with only one, like Ravens. There's a couple teams with only.
Yeah, what the hell, CDL? You're not going to put Attach up there on All-Star weekend?
There's no Clayster. Like, I'm like, I love methods and goes in.
Wait, there's no Clayster?
No.
Hold on. I got CDL on speed dial. We got to talk about that. That doesn't make any sense.
I was like 12-2 hardpoint record, and this dude's frying out of his mind in Stage 3. Like, I was shocked that Clayster wasn't on there, to be just blatantly honest.
There
Like,
was so many. I literally, like, maybe I missed it. I was just looking for ROKKR guys that I would just Standy, and I was like, huh. I'm still gonna watch CDL
Standy's gonna fry.
All-Star Weekend
Yeah,
though. Like, that'll be
Standy's
fun.
gonna
It
fry.
looks like they have a lot of fun stuff planned for that. But just one more point on Search and Destroy, then we can kind of talk about some other stuff. I do want to say, and listen, I'm just a director of content. I'm not a coach. I'm not a player. I've never played at a high level. All right, the most high level I have is going on like a 29 win streak in Black Ops 2 League play, okay? By the way, Standout is coming back this week, so I'm back. I'm getting on the sticks. But no, so you saw the way that ROKKR was playing Search and Destroy in some instances, and you and I, Icon, you know, yo, let's go, Trevor. Yeah, that's right. 90 plus watching, 34 likes. Hit the like button, my friends. Let's go. Hit the like button. Can we get to 100 likes? We probably can. If there's 100 people in here, I'm hitting like right now. How did I not do that already? All right.
Oh, you outed
like,
yourself.
yo, if we have 100 people in here right now and we all hit like at the same time, watch what happens. At least get us to 69 likes. Come on, for the culture. Let's go. But no, so yeah, one thing I'll say on the Search and Destroy, and I hate to like bring it up because it's negative, and I think that things will be a little better now. But Icon, how many times were you and I watching the raid Search and Destroy that ROKKR was doing? And they would just do the same setup. Priest, circle, attach, on top of the rock, Standy, looking at Zig, accuracy at Tiki. Rarely any change. They were very, and I'd watched that same strat in our last match on Raid Search and Destroy, and you could tell the players we were playing against, I forget even who it was all a blur because it was so long ago, but like they just picked right away. Like they had, they knew what the strat was there for our defense on Raid Search. And I'm not saying, like, you do see in competitive Call of Duty a lot of the same kind of strats. You always kind of see a person, you know, on the beach on Miami, and then a person in the freaking tourist area or whatever you called it. I can't remember the name, the call out. Listen, I'm definitely not a coach. You guys can tell. But you like, they just, there's so many like setups that are kind of common or like standard. But I would just love to see ROKKR be able to change it up, and I do think MajorManiak can help on that front. So I'm excited to see what happens. Let's go. The group selection show. So guys, if you don't know, after every stage, so the stage 3's over, the major happened, woohoo, go FaZe. Never knew that they'd win. Who knows? Dude, they must have qualified for champs like 3 months ago. But, you know, they won, so it's cool.
After the first major.
Exactly. And now we're going back to another stage that starts next week after the All-Star weekend this weekend. And during this kind of off week, CDL does a group selection show where basically the teams will kind of pick the other teams that they want in a different group. It's all very confusing, but if you watch the show, it totally makes sense. And we will have a video. I think the groups will get released on Friday. That's usually when they do it anyway. So we'll have a video with the trees of us breaking it down and looking at the groups. And I don't know, man, is there even a team in the CDL you want to get in a group with at this point? Like, I guess I'd want to be in there with Surge, who doesn't have a fourth player right now. But geez, all the teams are so good.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like for the first 3 stages, it has always been like, okay, well, if we're in the same group as London, then that's probably a win. And now that has completely flipped on its head. And then you could probably maybe say that against, like you mentioned, Seattle. They have not looked great. We'll see what they do with their roster. I know there's some talk of roster moves potentially happening with Paris. So maybe that's also a squad. But other than that, other than those 3, it's like anybody you're going to end up being in a group with, like any of those teams that are 4 through 8, not to mention the top 3, like the top 3, New York, Toronto, Atlanta, those speak for themselves. But do you really know what you're going to get out of the LA Thieves? I mean, they came in, they looked really high, they looked really low. You don't really know, like, over the next stage, are they going to like super like get 1,000 times better, or are they going to stay the same? Are they going to regress? You can say the same thing for Dallas. Like right now, Dallas seems like they're on a little bit of a slide, but you got Illy and you got Shotzi and you got Krim. I mean, those are players that are probably going to get it figured out. So if you're talking about like who you want to be in a group with, I feel like there's just so many teams that come to mind that, okay, maybe sure, put us in a group with Seattle, but they could sign one of these young SMGs and they could play like Standy, and then they'll be a totally different team too. It's just so many things are up in the air with all of these squads at the moment.
Ooh, great question, Christophis. Gosh, I'm so sorry. Christophels? I'm so sorry, I can't read. How do you think the new roster will perform on land? Man, I'm excited. I'm excited for Landy. All right, Standy
Hashtag.
Listen,
Yep, let's keep it.
I will become Standy's manager and help him make merch. I got, the Standy stands, Landy. We gotta build your brand, kid. Let's go. No, but I think like people are making this big deal. Oh, these rookies. What are they gonna do on land? I don't know, man. I can't speak for all the rookies in the league because I don't know all their direct history. I know Standy's the best, I would say, but he's won challengers events on land before. He actually won the land event that was here at the Armory in Minneapolis before the world ended and stuff. So like, he has not main stage land experience, which is way different. But there's going to be no crowd at these lands, so I mean,
Exactly.
I think every player in the league you will see their true form on LAN. And just as a reminder, guys, the stage 4 group matches will still be online. Big sad, but it's okay. We'll get through this. But the major, is going to be on LAN. And I don't think there's going to be spectators, but what do you guys think? Like, what do you, Kingdom, I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think ROKKR, who's going to excel on LAN?
I mean, Scumpy and like people who have been there before and have no fear of standing up and yelling at somebody else because that's part of the game to them. Like that's the part where the young players, like maybe their respect. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be a little bit different what comes from them. Even when you watch those after wins videos, like the little cutscenes they show, the people that are talking the most trash is like Crimsix, Clayster, Formal. It's people that have been around for a long time and know that there's a mutual respect amongst all these guys that have won multiple championships. And we've seen it last year in the opener when Scump stood up and pointed over at the Dallas Empire. Like, this is some of the stuff that I can't wait to see, even without a crowd. Like, because I think regardless, there are players that are going to just pump their chest. I mean, Clayster is going to scream and yell at someone. And when he's gassing, we see his silent mouth going, we're going to, like, his teammates are going to hear that, and so is the other team. So I think, honestly, there are some players that will excel, but it's the guys that are already at the top of the league. Technically, for the ROKKR, this should be a benefit and what kind of lifts them up, because the major is where, I mean, I just got to admit, it's okay to say it. There have definitely been some technical challenges just because it's online, and that's just, I mean, this is probably some of the most entertaining Call of Duty I've ever seen. However, there still are these technical challenges and timeouts and things like that we're not going to have anymore. It's just going to be flawless, pure, uninterrupted gameplay. And the breaks are going to be intentional rather than, hey, so Miles is going to tell some jokes because we're waiting for Kenny to get back in the lobby. We're not going to see that anymore. And so I'm excited for it. I think the Minnesota ROKKR actually have a good opportunity with people like Attach on their team, MajorManiak on their team, like who have some of that pedigree and experience and are okay. Like, Attach is going to have to be vocal. And that's where technically Lamar definitely would have stood up and yelled at some people. Like, definitely would have been vocal. And so I think Attach is going to be good because he's going to be vocal for the team. But watch out for Standy, man. I just have a feeling Standy is going to, like, I think he's going to be unafraid of all these big guys that are in the league, because he beat Optic and FaZe in his first, or Optic and Dallas kind of in his first 2 series. And he said confidently, like, he doesn't see himself as beneath them. He's like, they're on the same level. Like, he can play Call of Duty as good as they can. It's really about teamwork and all these other things. And so I think Standy and Attach, that duo, when they're piecing, it's just going to be exciting to watch. And I think LAN is going to be a benefit for the Minnesota ROKKR.
I think, just to kind of go on this, because I think every time that this has come up, I'm pretty sure Kingdom and I disagree on this point, but I think that Standy is going to be fine. I don't think, he's been in that situation. He's been there before. He's been to lands. He's won lands, albeit not in the CDL, but he's done stuff before. But if you just think, like, there are so many, you could go roster by roster outside of basically Optic, Dallas, and Atlanta. Outside of those 3 squads, like, every one of these squads has fairly new players on them. Yep. And even just from like the latest Saga episode, if you haven't seen the latest Saga episode, I think it's the best one yet, where you go through and you see the clutch that accuracy had in that S&D and all that good stuff. But if you look, like Standy has the screen on his left, He's got his monitor in front of him. He's got a wall to his right. And that's like how he's played the majority of his matches. And I think he'll be fine. I don't, he's been there and stuff like that. But some of these other young stars that have been playing in that same scenario, when now all of a sudden, sure, you don't have 1,000 OG fans in front of you, like throwing stuff at you and yelling and screaming or whatever, but you still have these bright lights in front of you. You have cameras walking back and forth. You look across, you have the Michael Jordan of Call of Duty with Scump over there, and just kind of like the aura that he brings. And oh, by the way, there's Formal, and oh crap, now Simp and Abizi we got to play against. And instead of being online, like they're literally standing right there. And it just like, it's a different aura. And you're not at your setup, and you see these guys in real life, and the lights and the cameras and all this stuff is on you. I think that's where the difference is going to be, where like over this last year, we've seen so many vets that have been around the scene for the last 8-9 years or whatever are no longer on a roster. And I think this is the environment that they thrive in because they've been there before, and it's just totally different from top to bottom. Now you throw a live audience in there, now it changes even more. But I just think like Slasher's not phased by being on main stage or having people there or who's across. Like, you just know as soon as he gets into a match that he's not affected by it. You don't know how a lot of these, like, how's Hydra going to act? Or, you know what I mean? Like, Hydra has come into the CDL and set the hardpoint world on fire. What's he going to do in this sort of environment? So it's just different, but it seems like every time this comes up, we have a little bit of a disagreement.
We're kind of on the same page today, though. Like, I mean,
yeah, maybe so.
For the ROKKR, I think they'll be fine. But I agree with you on someone like Venom. Like, I don't know what he's gonna do up against the Ginger Ninja sitting over there, saying expletives at him because he got wrecked. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how normal people react to that, because we have to be real about this. The reason all these young guys like Standy and all these guys are in the league, and you even can look at like Mac Melts and Asim, and you look at all these guys and these hot SMGs, these future iterations of Scump, and Simp, of course, has come the freaking closest, and that guy's career is going to be ridiculous. But you look at all these guys, and it's kind of like, well, he was probably a hero of theirs. He probably was someone they looked up to when they were 10, 11, 12 years old. They were watching Scump, and they were playing like him and they wanted to be Scumpy, and they wanted to be Formal, and like they wanted to be Crim6, and they saw the Cole Dynasty, and they've seen all this. They look up to those guys. So sitting next to them and then having them yell in your face, I think there will be some different preparation that a lot of these coaches will have to do for the LAN experience, because Brian Saint has played on LAN. Like, he has experience. Like, a lot of the coaches of all these teams, like Theory with Paris, like, he has LAN experience, and so I think, even though I guess a lot of the Paris guys have LAN experience, but I think I agree with you, Icon. It's unpredictable, but I do think the Minnesota ROKKR are gonna fare well, because I've watched Standy on camera, even how he handles himself, like when he was on the flank and when he's getting interviewed, and even when we got to talk to him, and he's pretty sharp. He's ahead of the game, in my opinion. He's got a very long career in professional Call of Duty.
Do you guys think, MiDNiTE, I'll ask you this. So right now, of the top 4 squads, I feel like right now Atlanta's that number 1, but a very close second and a very close third have been New York and Toronto, and then you have Optic. Do you feel like once that 4th major is at LAN, do you feel like all of a sudden it's Optics that is Atlanta's biggest opponent, or do you think New York stays there, or somebody else comes up that has that veteran experience?
That's a great question. I honestly think, I know, and we talked about this on the last episode, right? Like, we feel like Optic may just be kind of banking on LAN a little bit here. They're like, oh, yeah, but we'll be back on LAN. And then they came out in an online major, and they showed out. They beat they had impressive wins. They were beating good teams. Like, they didn't just get a hot weekend. Like, you could tell whatever they started doing collectively and working together was really working out for them. So that is a team that I would look for to improve even more on LAN. But do I think that's enough to like shake down like New York subliners? I don't know, man. Just Clayster on LAN, he's going to take that French kid under his wing and be like, get him prepped, right? I think he won't be too shook. It seems like, it is there may be some players that, and to kind of go back to your guys' like disagreement, I kind of see both sides. Like there's going to be players that are a little bit shook and not adjusted, and they're feeling a little bit like they miss playing in their freaking room with their bed behind them for a league match. But there are other players that are going to rise to the occasion. There's just good LAN players in Call of Duty, and I don't think that you need years of experience to be good on LAN. It does help, but I do still think you could have an impact on LAN right away. So I don't know. I would say Optic will definitely improve. I think they'll get better on LAN, but I don't know that they're just going to surpass New York subliners who's made insane strides, right? Like Hydra's meshing well. FaZe is just going to be freakish on LAN. They're already terrifying. They're going to be even more terrifying on LAN. They are just insanely talented.
Yeah. I heard a stat that FaZe has been to 12 events, and they've been in the finals of 10 of them.
See, like they didn't need years of ramping into that. They were just good on LAN, right? Like they just made a name and they're just good. So I don't know. I think you're gonna have players. I don't know who it's gonna be. There's probably gonna be players. Hopefully they're not a ROKKR. Please, Lord Vonahar. But you're gonna have players that don't do well on LAN, or they're not able to rise to the occasion right away until they get some of that experience. But I don't know. I think Landy's gonna be lit. No jinx. Knock on wood. I think Landy will be there. I'm trying to think of other LAN. Landtach. What do we got? Priesta, Lansta. You got MajorManiak. Like we're gonna do it, baby. Let's get high, bro. I feel like Clay makes me confident, dude. Right? Whenever I watch Clayster play, I feel like I could run through a wall. So imagine how his teammates feel. No wonder they're just, man. Can we listen? We go. Dylan, yo, let's go, shitted, Dylan.
There you go, Dylan. I like that.
MiDNiTE's hilarious. Thanks for the gas. I'm for sure gonna read that out loud every time. Appreciate it. All right, so I want to end the show a little bit soon, but I got two other things that we gotta talk about. Dallas, WTF, and then we got Seattle, who doesn't have a fourth, but I'm seeing on Twitter, Doug Sensor Martin tweeting like it's happening, and like I don't know what that means, but like part of me just wants to see Doug join Surge and just watch that happen. That would be so sick. But I would just let's start with Dallas. They got rid of Hook. Obviously something deeper going on there. There's no way that they wouldn't just bench him and try out Fellow. But what do you think they do? Is Fellow they answered? I saw on the flank they were talking about, man, that team needs multiple changes. Like how do you make more changes than what they've already done? And who do you think they could bring on like in place of Fellow? Or do you think they should try to ride it out with Fellow a little bit more? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on Dallas.
I'll go because I know that Kingdom, he's always pretty high on Dallas. This is what I'll say. I knew the day after they won champs last year and they released Clay, I just wasn't sure they were going to be the same squad. I just feel like everything that Clay brings to the table is exactly what that roster needed. And as of late, Shotzi has looked good in like 2 or 3 of their last 5 or 6 matches. Like he's looked okay, but he hasn't been overwhelming. In the matchup against Optic, Illy had a 0.5 KD overall. Like it's just, to me, I look at Dallas and it just seems like with every move they made, I don't want to count them out, but it just seems like we've seen them, okay, we're going to start the year, we're going to put them at number 1 in terms of power rankings, and every single time, a major passes by or a roster move happens or there's like a stretch or a window of 2 or 3 weeks, they just always seem to regress a little bit more and a little bit more. And I don't feel like the first major, the biggest thing that was holding them up and keeping them in contention in a lot of these majors, and you can talk about how well they've done in the first 2 majors and so on and so forth, but as of late, that's been changing. But the biggest thing that was holding them up is that Hugh was, at that time, the best player in the game, like statistically against all major categories. Like he was either top 3 or he was number 1, and he was like in contention for player of the stage and early season MVP and all that stuff. So he was playing well. And I don't think a lot of other teams really had the game figured out like they did. I feel like what they bring to the table from their coaching staff and the veteran leadership that they have from Crim, I feel like they're a squad that can really figure out, different maps and modes and strategies before others might be able to. But ever since Hugh left and Fellows come aboard, I don't know. They just don't seem like the same squad. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I don't feel like, are you going to get rid? And I know every time this comes up, I feel like, are you really going to get rid of Hugh? Like, are you really going to get rid of Shotzi or Illy? And then it happens and you're like, what the heck? But I don't know. It just seems like every time we watch them, they're regressing a bit more and a bit more. And now all of a sudden, if you're going into a group stage and like right now, they're deciding on groups and all that stuff. And if you see Toronto, you're like, okay, that's going to be a pretty tough match. You see New York or Optic or Atlanta or even like LA Thieves or Florida, like I'm more afraid of those guys at this point in time than I am seeing Dallas. Like right now, if Dallas is in my group, I think, okay, yeah, we have a good day. We could easily win that matchup. So I don't know what the answer is. Maybe they make another roster move for Fellow, but even in that matchup against Optic, like Fellow was their best statistical player. I don't know what the answer is. They just haven't looked great, and it's just shocking to see. It seems like as the year has went on, they've just continued to regress and to continue to get worse, and their placements have gotten worse. So that's just my take. I'm not sure where they go from here.
Maybe they should get Doug Sims or Martin, huh?
Hey, there you go. Mix it up a bit.
That would be a big disaster.
Kingdom, let me know your thoughts.
So something has to be said about this whole Hook move. Like, it's tough scenes that so many people are like, why would Dallas do this? I mean, come on. You could have asked Hector the same thing when Scump went to Envy back in the day, because he wanted them to drop Nade Shot and they wouldn't. Like, if he wanted Krim to be dropped and Hastro said no, and he was like, well, then I don't want to play for you guys, well, then Hastro probably would let him go, because you can't ever overcome that. Like, and if they made a decision like, we're not dropping the 36-time champion, I'm sorry. He won last year. We would have kept all of you if we could have, and you guys would be, I mean, they would be unstoppable if they had Clayster and it was still 5v5. That team would be FaZe's biggest opponent, in my opinion. But because to Icon's point, I think part of what helped them be successful when Clayster was around is the way Clayster gasses and the way Clayster, like what he does with Asim. Like, that partnership is why Asim fries the way he fries so well. Like, Asim hasn't had as much success outside of Clayster. And so I think that what happened is maybe, and I think of Hook like Kyrie Irving. He won a championship, went to a couple finals with LeBron, and then was like, I can do this by myself. I don't need you, LeBron. Like, why do you always have to get the ball? Why do you always get the credit? Why do you always get the last shot? And playing with Krim, people have said it's difficult. I mean, you saw what happened to Slasher, because people said it's difficult to play with him. They're like, all right, hit the bench, and I just think this Dallas team was committed to the roster they had, and they were doing well. I just honestly, and I know I've said it on a previous show, I think Hook did not like their play style. He didn't like what was being asked of him. But what they knew, what Rambo knows and what Krim knows, is that you can have all of that talent, Shotzi, Illy, Hook, Krim, and they were doing well in the beginning of the season. But this game has become more and more about who can play the best teamwork, like who can work together the best. The reason FaZe fell off for barely, falling off for them is, oh, I'm sorry, we lost two matches and didn't win the grand final. Like, that's falling off for FaZe. They're 22-4 or whatever. But for Dallas, they kind of started to fall off, and they were like, all right, we got to do better teamwork. Hook, you have to do this. Krim said his whole little tweet about, look at the mini map. Hook was kind of teary-eyed between one of the things, and after they had won a match, said, I have to play better and be a better teammate. Like, and that, I thought that was weird. And I just honestly think they could have won with Hook. They could have been a dominant team. They could have placed top 4 easily at champs if Hook was still on the roster. Things have changed. It's unfortunate because I don't know now. I agree with you, Icon, but I think the reason is because Hook's gone. Like, what team wouldn't get worse if Hook left them? It's like it's like if Simp left FaZe. They're an amazing team. But you could replace Simp with anybody. They're still not going to be the same team because they've learned how to work together. And you look at those guys as individuals, they're amazing, but they can lose. Toronto proved it. New York proved it. The ROKKR proved it. FaZe can lose if they're not playing as a team. And I think that that Dallas roster wasn't playing as a team. And unfortunately, with Fellow playing as a team, their ceiling is a lot lower. It's no longer competing with FaZe and competing with Ultra and competing with subliners. It's competing with Optic and competing with Mutineers and competing with Thieves and competing with Minnesota. Like, that's where they're at now. Every match is tough for them. It used to be, because, I mean, you guys got to imagine if you're FaZe going into these groups and you look at your group, you're like, okay, we're at least going to get 3 wins. Let's see if we can get 4 or 5. Like, because we have a couple of teams that we're going to have to really put in a lot of work to beat. And they still sometimes lose to the lower team, but rarely. I mean, they've lost 4 matches all year long. And so I think that Dallas is in a really hard place, man. They go into these tournaments, they're going to go into stage 4. And if they don't make a change, and you think about it, if the Dallas Empire or the Seattle Surge are both trying to get a sub player, who would you go to if you're a good sub player? Like, who would you choose? Which team would you go to? And you look at the potential of going to one of the most storied franchises in COD history in that Envy House. And I mean, unfortunately, I think if there is a little bit of a bidding war, I think Dallas will win out, and maybe the Surge will end up with Fellow or somebody else. Maybe Fellow goes back to the bench. I don't know. I just think if Dallas is going to make a change, they should make it now and then ride the rest of the year out.
We'll have to see how it goes, man. I don't know. I don't know what they do next. I'm trying to, like, they gotta be frustrated. They gotta be a little frustrated, man. They make
look at the mini map.
A really, like, a heated change, right? That there had to be some sort of turmoil going on there, and then you're trying to make it work. I think the landscape for free agents or who's available for them to get at the time, maybe it just wasn't looking good. I think Fellow was already on their bench, right? So, like, all right, next man up, let's see.
Yep.
And now they
That's
saw,
all they could do.
You're definitely right about the ceiling, right? Like, they do have a much lower ceiling with Fellow on the team than they did with Hook, which, I mean, Hook's a freak. But, I mean, hey, like, if Dallas is saying, because literally, it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, Dallas messed up. Like, we lost to Dallas, and we as in ROKKR, I wasn't playing. Maybe I should not. I'm just kidding. So ROKKR loses to Dallas, but outslayed them. So that shows that Dallas is fundamentally, during that match, a better team, right? And so that's so important. So if they were maybe trying to unlock that vibe with Hook and it wasn't working, square peg, round hole, whatever the deal, it didn't work. But so I don't know who they put in next, though. It's a good question in the chat. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not Rambo Ray right now, because it's tough. Honestly, wouldn't work personality-wise, but drop Fellow and Illy for Slasher and a sub. Oh my goodness, I would pay pay-per-view money to watch Slasher and Chris be on the same team. There is no shot that works. No shot that works. I would pay pay-per-view money to watch that, though. That would be amazing. I think Krim got.
Might as well add Aches if you're gonna.
How do you
add
get rid of
Slasher.
Krim, though?
You can't. They're not. He won't get rid. He will not leave that team before this year's up unless he chooses to. He's in the same seat as like someone like Scump with Hastro. I think maybe Hook thought he was that guy, and he probably was the future of that franchise. The organization made a decision to stand with who they have, and of course it looks like Shotzi and Illy were fine staying. And I watched Shotzi and Illy, and they seem to be fine with the brand of Call of Duty that Crim 6 likes to play. So does Fellow. Unfortunately, like we just talked about, it lowers their ceiling. They're going to have to replace, if they can't replace Crim, in his leadership and his ability and his grind, then and just overall, once they get on land, you're going to see a different Crim as well, especially at champs, but I think they have to pull somebody in. They have to try to mix it up, like these other teams are.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll be following along close. I'm sure we all are for Dallas there. Shout out to Douche in the chat. So looking at Seattle Surge, they are the only CDL team right now that does not have a full roster. They are sitting in dead last all of the times that I predicted them from an upset pick and they lost. I still can't believe it. I thought they really did look good at one point, like good enough to start some momentum, and then it just didn't happen. They swap out Looney for Decimate. That lasts like 24 hours or whatever. It's an exaggeration, but it wasn't very long. And now they have a vacant spot. Dog Sensor Martin's tweeting. There's what other subs are available. I'm not really sure. I feel like a lot of the good ones got snatched up. Shout out to Standy, aka Landy, soon to be. But like, What do you think Seattle should do? And what do you think they will do?
I don't know. I'll say just from the get go here that I don't know what their next move is. And I agree with you. When you were picking them for upsets, there was that point in time where it seemed like they needed just a little bit more help from their SMG position. And if they got that, it was going to put them over the ledge. They were that close. And I can't tell you how many times I saw the graphic. It was towards the end of stage 2 where you saw, here's Pristini and what his KD and hardpoint and S&D and control was in stage 1, and everything was much better in stage 2. And the same thing when it came to Octane. It just seemed like every time you compared what they did at the beginning of the year to where they were towards the end of stage 2, everything was better. They were playing in the matchup against ROKKR, it was stage 2. Minnesota needed a reverse sweep, and it was really close. A lot of those, that map 3, map 4 was really close. Minnesota needed a reverse sweep to come back and get that victory over Seattle, which is one of the reasons why they were the number 1 seed in that stage 2. But just where Seattle's at now, it just seems like, okay, maybe Looney brought a lot more to the table than what we thought he did. Sure, maybe the slaying numbers weren't there and the first blood percentages as an SMG and S&D weren't there, but maybe he brought a lot more in terms of, strategies and what they're trying to accomplish on S&D and stuff like that. And it seems like, okay, they brought in Decimate. Decimate had been playing really well in the challenger scene. He comes in, doesn't really put up the right numbers, and he just says, all right, I'm out. So now you're back to 3. And it does feel like, sure, there are some options out there, but there's probably no standees left. There's probably no Venoms left, right? Those guys were just absolutely slaying the challenger scene for the first 2 or 3 comps because they were that lightning in the bottle where you could bring them in, you could put them next to Attach, and all of a sudden, Standy and Attach, they're going to start winning maps and winning matches for you. And I just don't think there's really anybody left to put. I mean, if you look at the players that have been benched, maybe you could bring in a TJ. TJ has been playing really well. I'm still kind of at the point where I feel like if TJ was still on the LA Thieves roster, they might be a little bit better than where they're at right now. Not that anybody's underperforming, but TJ, there were some maps earlier in the year, especially SNDs, where he was 12-0, and he was the reason why LA Thieves won some of those SND maps. So maybe he's somebody that you bring in. It seems like right now, if you look at the pool of SMGs that are available, I'm not sure that you have that lightning in a bottle option. So we'll see what happens going forward. But even looking at the CDL points, they've got 50 CDL points. The team in 8th place has 120 CDL points. I mean, how are they going to make up 70 CDL points in a matter of 2 stages? They'd have to make a move, win stage 4 major, and maybe then it wouldn't even be enough. I mean, so
if they win the next stage, they would only be 5 points above Florida right now.
But that's if Florida doesn't get any more wins and Minnesota doesn't get any more.
Florida, Los Angeles, London, Paris, and all these other teams would have to win nothing, and they'd be in 8th place if they won the next major.
Yeah, so I don't know. Overall, I'm not sure where Seattle goes from here. I don't think that it can get much worse, but I think they have to make it.
It can, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This is one that kind of has me mind boggled. I'm not sure where to go here.
I'm gonna say it's chalked. Just honestly, if they win the next 2 majors, it's 150 points. They'd have as many points as Optic does right now, and then you have to add in the matches in between. But in this last stage, they won 0 matches. They got 0 points, none, not 10, nothing. And so I think that it's chalked. I think that there's no signs of life. I think we've seen this story before, unfortunately, from the Seattle Surge. And they've put together good rosters in the past. They've spent money on good people. They've made roster changes. And it seems to be nothing has helped. I don't want to get to the point where we're saying that Octane is the common denominator, because he also is always their statistically best player. And he somehow finds himself onto these, league leading stats in certain areas. Yeah, free Octane. Octane has to free himself. We said this before the show, and I'll just, say my opinion on it publicly, but I think Octane has maybe one more chance, and that is the end of this season, to get himself on a top 4 team. The top 4 teams, they keep their rosters. I mean, look at Dallas from last year. Look at FaZe from last year. Like, they made little changes, and then it's like they're not going to, FaZe isn't going to make a change for the rest of the year. And so at this point, does he wait for Krim to retire and try to sneak in there? Does he try to get on the Minnesota ROKKR next year if they need a AR? Does he try to get on the Ultra because Insight gets traded to somewhere? Does he try to take over for Clay because Clay retires on top? Like, I think he has one more chance, and otherwise he's going to be the Charles Barkley and spend the rest of his career maybe winning majors but not getting a ring. And it's unfortunate because Octane is freaking talented and he's entertaining. Like, I love this dude's videos and his content and what he puts on the timeline. And like, it's unfortunate that now, I don't know if Desi sketched, which is, I don't even know if can you do that anymore, like with these organizations. Like, can you just be like, I'm not playing anymore, I'm done, I was on a temporary contract, I don't want to come back. I mean, who knows? But they're literally stuck without a fourth, and it's unfortunate, man. It's tough scenes for those good players. I mean, they've got, because of the people that they have on their team, they have a great roster of veterans that don't really, I mean, Gunless, Pristini, and Octane, like, and they couldn't win a single match, and they got close on some. And so I'm just going to say it's chalked, and I don't mean the team is done. They're going to keep playing, but do you now spend more money trying to get like a really expensive player that can help you not get to champs, but do it in style? I don't think so. I really just, I think at this point, if you're the organization themselves, you look at and they got rid of their general manager earlier in the year. Like, they've been making changes. Like, if you're the organization itself, this is what basketball teams do. If you said it, MiDNiTE, you mentioned that draft picks thing. If that actually becomes a factor, then be okay being last. Keep playing your hardest and your best, and you see what happens. I mean, Lag has kind of done that this year. They brought in Cheen to try to make a difference, and they've made a couple changes, but in reality, they have a chance, and so they're going to keep trying. But a team like Seattle dropping below the Ravens, below Paris, like, and being last, I don't know if there's enough points out there for them to grab. With the talent that we have in this league right now, they'd have to go on one of the most epic runs we've ever seen in Call of Duty history. And they haven't proven that. I mean, they don't even have a full roster yet to do that with. So, I mean, good luck to them. Like, I would love to see something cool happen, to be blatantly honest. Pristini is a player that I've always loved watching. When him and Alec were together, that was amazing. Like, and watching those guys play together, and he's watching his brother have one of the most dominant runs of his entire career while he's sitting at Seattle and can't get a win, and so it's got to be tough scenes. And I'm just saying, when I say it's chalked, I just mean, I think we can tip our hat and say good season, but champs is just not going to happen this year for the Seattle Surge.
And I think, like, I mean, I don't know the mentality, and I don't actually know, like, the contract situations. It seems possible that Octane, because how the CDL contracts worked, is public knowledge. You'd sign it, and then you play the first year, which was last year, and then the team has an option to +1 you for the next year. So unless they renegotiated with Octane, which seems less likely, I don't know if they did or not, but it seems more likely that they extended his +1, which would mean he has the autonomy at the end of the season to choose if he wants to re-sign there or not. That's not for fact. That's just my, like, bird's eye view looking at using. I'm inferring here. So I'll be interested to see, like, it's hard when you're a player. It's got to be hard because I mean, we talk about ceilings, right? Hopefully ROKKR just blew the ceiling off the joint and stage 4 is ours, baby. But, you talk about ceilings. Seattle is the worst highest ceiling team I've ever seen. They're supposed to be good, especially last year too. I mean, they had Karma.
Yeah.
Like, they should be good. They should be better than they are, and they were so close. That's why I was trying to get some upset predictions, and I thought I was delusionally confident, like, they got this, bro. And they just couldn't. They went to so many map 5s. It's been insane for Seattle, and I wonder, when you're on that team, do they think it's chalked? Like, at that point, like, are you just kind of going into rebuild mode? You're like, okay, clearly, like, there's a bomb about to go off in this joint. We got to try to find the next, like, thing for our team, the next franchise player. Because I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going on behind the scenes? Who might be, sitting on that roster next year?
Speaking
Ashley
of John,
John,
go ahead.
John would be a good fit. Veteran who has proven himself. and has gone on LAN in the past. That's still like a really not understood situation, right? He hasn't played for 2 years.
He's been playing in challengers though. Like John,
has he?
Yeah, and I think and he's been playing good enough to play in the league, and he has the understanding. He's played with Octane before. I mean, but the last time him and Octane played was when they were beating Optic and giving Optic their worst placing ever, and both of them were supposed to go to Optic at that time. Like that was the rumor, and Octane actually ended up going. And so I honestly believe that, like, Looney came out today. There was a video where Looney said the week that he knew something was happening, he didn't know it was him because they stopped talking to him. The team was playing different, and they played worse against New York, and they lost, got reverse swept, and then it was like, all right, peace Octane, or peace Looney, you're off the roster. And I think that is a reality of a team like this, that is this caliber of players, is they are going to play different when it's chalked. And I hope they haven't accepted that, because your stats matter. How you play out the season matters for where you play next year. If we've learned anything this year, no spot is guaranteed. There's a few spots in this league right now that are guaranteed, and it's players that are still like an attach, like a scump, like that are still playing at the highest level, even though they've been in the league forever. Or the granddaddy of them all, Mr. Clayster, who's the oldest player on the sticks and is frying out of his mind. Like, I think that outside of those couple of spots, there's Minnesota's included. Like, maybe the bottom 8 teams are always up for a roster change if it's needed. And going into next year, they're going to be up for a roster change if it's needed. And that doesn't mean, oh, you can't depend on a team and you can't rely on your team. It means you got to play your best all the time. And that's where, someone like Pristini could easily not be playing next year. And that's unfortunate. But if you would have told me Slasher would be on the bench for the rest of the season and he wouldn't be playing, and that LA would keep moving people around but never put him back on, I would have told you were crazy. So we'll see what happens with this league. Methods is playing in the All-Star game as a Challengers player. Like, anything can happen.
That is so crazy. Yo, shout out Zinni. Zinni's the man. That's amazing.
Zinni is the man.
Oh man, wow, what an episode, bro. I love talking COD with you guys every dang week. The rotation live on Tuesdays at 7:30 Central Standard Time. I really appreciate you guys joining us today. Hey man, we blew past 69 likes. Really appreciate you guys. Couldn't get to 100, but hey, maybe next time. Really appreciate all the chatters in the chat. I don't know if it's the new comment on the screen functionality, but the chat was bumping tonight. Lots of great different opinions, ideas, just thoughts on the matters, which is really awesome. I mean, obviously it's great to just sit down and talk not only with IKON and Kingdom each week, but also to see your guys' takes in the chat. So be sure to return for more. If you're listening to this after the fact that it is live, that is okay. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. We do this live on the YouTube every week. Speaking of live, one thing you guys should most definitely check out is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Blast is playing as the #1 seed with his teammate Mutex in a 2v2 quads format nade shot 100K Warzone tournament. What a mouthful.
Let's go.
Definitely check out Blast. It's twitch.tv/BLAZT. Make sure to cheer on Rasim while he plays in that tournament tomorrow. That's a big tournament for the kid. Big day for Røkkr, right? He's our Warzone streamer. Got to show that love and support. Other things to look out for this week, like we mentioned, the group selection show is going to come through from CDL, I believe, on Friday. So we will get to see, the chosen on-screen presence from each team, a representative. They will be kind of picking the groups for stage 4. So that'll be really exciting to see what group Røkkr gets into. How's it gonna go? We can start to speculate from there. So we'll see you guys next week. And yeah, that's all I got. Blast Pack, let's get it. Let's get it. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. And IKON Kingdom, thanks as always for being on with me.
Adios.